So, welcome everyone to our session today on how to supercharge your GTM motion by selling based on value. I'm Nicola, Chapter Head of Pavilion London, and delighted to have Matthew, Martin, and Katia here, who will be telling us more about how to introduce a value selling practice into your motion. Now, we've already seen the market shift from demo-led to value-based sales, and according to our poll, 80% of you are already in the process of transitioning to this. So this is a great opportunity to hear from some experts in the space and supercharge your own value selling process. Now, we will be sharing the recording afterwards and slide deck, so don't worry about taking screenshots. And we'll also aim to have 10 minutes for Q&A at the end. But before I hand over to Matthew, please do introduce yourselves in chat and share whether you are using value-based selling, and if so, the benefits you've seen. So without further ado, over to Matthew, who has the best job title. He heads up innovation and transformation at SalesLoft, and he is going to be sharing with us how to effectively introduce a value practice into your sales motion.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you very much, Nicola, and thank you everybody for joining today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we'll get started. So as Nicola said, I'm looking after innovation and transformation at SalesLoft, and that started 3 years ago when we introduced the value-based approach to the way we go to market to ensure that we enable our customers to understand the outcomes that we deliver for them. Value selling isn't something that has appeared in the last 3 years. Is actually a discipline that's been driven for the last 15 years, started out the likes of Oracle and such. And today we're going to talk a little bit about what is value, how do you bring value to life in your organization, where would you get started, and what are the ways to do it quickly and effectively in the kind of smaller, more transactional parts of your business. So with that, I'm going to jump in and start thinking about how do you establish the value advantage in your GTM. So the first thing we really need to think about when we think about what is value is how do you actually unlock a value-based sale in your organization? Most organizations think that value means putting an ROI calculator into your existing sales cycle, showing the customer a business case at the end of the cycle to allow them to have something numeric to justify the decision. But I'm here to challenge that notion. And hopefully, actually, you're all going to challenge that notion yourselves, because we all know that the art of selling is matching logic to emotion to allow the customer to understand exactly what you solve for them, help them to imagine the kind of new world post whatever it is you're trying to get them to change into, and then giving them some kind of logical process in order to follow to unlock that benefit. Now, 10 years ago, the ROI approach to value selling was acceptable. You could go along to an organization, you could talk about an ROI, you could show them a numerical benefit, and that was an acceptable way to sell. But as times have got harder, as buyers have matured, as they've become more educated, you now need to be able to link both of these things together. You need to be able to have a value-led story that ties together the emotional connection of I want to do this, it will improve something in my organization, and use the numeric side of it as the confirmation bias to justify that emotional decision to purchase from you. So when we talk about value selling, we're really talking about connecting a really simple to understand emotive story with a numerical outcome that shows the customer not only what, but how they achieve that outcome. That's what I think about with value. And when I'm in person doing this chat, I always ask people, what does value mean to you? And obviously, value means different things to different people. I'm not going to do it in this setting because it's going to take half an hour to go around. But the whole point here is that you cannot understand what my value is until you understand me. You cannot understand how to provide me value just because you have it on a slide and you think it's valuable. That value comes out of the emotional connection and the conversations you have to unlock the real understanding of what an organization is trying to achieve. So that sounds like it's going to be complicated to do, but actually I'm here to tell you it's really not. It's actually quite simple to enable your field force at scale to unlock emotional and logical value-led conversations. So why might you want to have a value first approach to go to market? Well, I look at the so what curve as a perfect example to explain why you might want to bring value in. And many of you have said that you're already doing value, and that's fantastic. And many of you are already probably trying to move up the axis on the right here in the same way. You're probably trying to solve a business problem. You're trying to elevate yourself from solving a technical use case or a department need. You're probably trying to move yourself up into attaching yourself to some executive commitment or some company results, especially in the current economic climate where really what you're trying to do is make sure that you're selling against that funded initiative, one of those 2 or 3 things that are funded for this year. And ultimately, by bringing value into the way you work, you should be able to accelerate your cycle times, improve the predictability of their close, drive better win rate, and increase the overall ACV. And the way that I look at companies maturing through this cycle when I engage with them, I expect that typically they start off down here doing 25 to 50K deals, solving problems for departments. Then as they want to move up to become a kind of a full platform player or a kind of a multi-seat, multinational deal, they need to attach themselves to the business's strategic initiatives. And again, that sounds hard, but actually it's really not. Effectively, what you need to do is equip your team to evolve from telling your platform story so that they can talk about the platform, they can talk about the capabilities, to then move into how that platform solves business problems and connect the dots of what those business problems mean to an organization, to then show how the use cases themselves in the platform deliver on those value drivers. It's a really simple kind of modular approach. I have this amazing thing, but in the first part of the sales cycle, the customer doesn't care about your platform. They care about the bit in the middle, the business problem that they're trying to solve, and they care about your ability to solve that business problem. And then you use your platform pitch as a differentiator as you move later into the sales cycle. So the natural question is, how do you equip your sales team to be able to tell these different stories about the outcomes that you drive? And effectively, the way that I've seen this work well, and the way that I typically drive organizations to do this is to first define those value levers. What are they? What are the problem statements that your customers are thinking about when they're looking to invest in this kind of technology or this kind of in the products or services that you sell? What is the problem that you're solving for them? And that needs to be something that's in their language, a thing that they have as an objective inside their business. And typically those problem statements will map to ability to do more, to reduce risk, or to save money. So risk, cost, and value. Once you've defined those problem statements, you can start to layer into that the specific discrete use case capability that solves that problem. Once you've done that, you can then map that between the different personas that likely buy your technology and build talk tracks for each of those personas to enable your reps to be able to diagnose the problem that the customer has and have a specific talk track for the view of each persona and how each persona would consume the information about that technology. And then you move into a set of KPIs and metrics, the measurables, again mapped by persona, so you can have a business-led conversation about my organization is here to help organizations like yourself solve this discrete business problem with these use cases. And typically in your role, these are the metrics we recommend that you measure and you define throughout the life of the engagement. And as you can see here, this kind of framework enables you to deliver a marketing approach to understanding exactly what conversations you have with your customers at what time and with what message. But it also enables your sellers to peer with senior leaders on the customer side and have executive conversations about exactly the business problem that you're solving and have that differentiated conversation. Obviously, these 3 or 4 visuals are internal only. You don't share these with the customer. This is the kind of enablement that you do to help your reps. And then what sits underneath this is then all the kind of messaging guides and all the connectivity between the product that you actually sell and the outcomes that you're enabling for a customer. And I found that this really helps you at scale to educate your sales team to bring a value motion to the way that you go to market equip them to have business first conversations, and effectively establish that kind of student teacher environment where they're able to share information, become a peer of the executive they're talking to, because they have enough base knowledge and enough kind of intrigue to be able to sound and act like someone that wants to solve the problem versus someone that's trying to deliver just a sale to them. And obviously doing it this way, it's no surprise to the customer when you do bring the kind of the classic value calculation capabilities into the deal, and they're ready to receive that information, and you've earned the right to deliver that information in a trusted way, rather than selling products and features and then putting a calculator on the table at 70% through the deal cycle. So this is the experience that I have, and this is the approach that I typically take when I bring value into organizations. And this is something that I see more and more organizations walking towards now. How do we equip the rep to be able to have this value-led, value-first conversation? So when I think about how you actually establish all those processes or all those kind of talk tracks in your organization, I think a modern value practice needs to be able to do three things. It needs to help your sellers to establish value even before they reach out. So using those messaging guides to understand what is the typical problem that the person I'm contacting is likely to have. How can I use some simple metrics from those pyramids to be able to go with a quantified assessment of, I believe from what the research that we've done, your organization has this much pain. You then use that to pivot into, well, I want to take my outside assessment and get deeper into your organization and run some discovery and workshops with you to prove how much of that identified pain is extractable, is unlockable in your business. And during the sales cycle, rather than orienting demos where you're talking features and you're talking about capability, you're actually showing how your business extracts that potential value and using the use cases underneath that to show how each feature delivers some tangible benefit for that organization. And then finally, unfortunately, because professionals like me have been doing this for a long time, organizations no longer just buy on the business case anymore. You have to also put that into some kind of delivery plan. And that's the value realization method, where as you get through to the final stages of the contract, you then give the customer extra confidence to reduce the risk of investing with you with an operate and run plan for the first 18 months of the contract to show how not only they extract what's in the business case, but you have joint alignment between both organizations of what your roles and responsibilities are and how you're going to govern together that you would do unlock and achieve the value. Now, the value realization piece, I haven't seen many organizations in the last 5 years that have really got that right, but it's becoming so much more important in organizations that want to sell on value to be able to offer that post-sale value commitment and equip anyone with a CSM organization or a kind of account management post-sales organization, equip them with the tools to be able to continue the conversation about how you're delivering on the business objective and making sure you're refreshing and refining that business objective as the customer's organization changes. And that's a very strong play for defending against churn and enabling you to drive long-term enduring relationships. So that sounds like it's a kind of a discrete process in itself, but actually it really just locks into your existing sales process typically. On the left is kind of the rough construct of what most organizations have as a sales process. And typically in the early stages of their prospecting, they'll have some kind of provocative motion to share to try and engage the customer around a business problem they want to solve or a kind of an event in their space that they want to drive for. And typically using the kind of messaging framework and some kind of point of view or hypothesis as an outreach tool enables you to start with a value-led sale. During the discovery process, which every organization will have, you just target the questions a level higher to make sure you understand what's the business problem, how does this technical issue that you have or this business issue you have relate to some kind of pain. And then you build out the solution blueprint in the same way that you would, but rather than just saying here are the features, you justify that feature with here's the feature, here's the value it unlocks, here's who it provides benefit to. And again, it's not about revolutionizing the way that you go to market. It's just about adding on a kind of a business layer to the typical layer of how you go sell. But this is kind of how I think about bringing this into your sales process. Um, and as I move to the next stage, as I said, actually value selling is really a team sport, something that the whole organization would need to do in order to for the customer to show value from the very beginning to the very end of a life cycle with the organization with you. And when I look at those messaging guides that I was showing at the very beginning and those kind of value levers, by putting those in place, you actually establish a language of value across your whole organization. So everybody that interacts with the customer can understand what is the value that we're unlocking for the organization that's my customer. How does the job role that I deliver against help me to unlock that value for the customer? And how does what I do actually enable me to continue to provide value to that customer? So in the account exec and the sales engineer roles, that's fairly straightforward. At the beginning of the sales cycle, you're sharing this messaging of this is the business problem you have, this is how I'm best placed to solve that business problem, and this is the impact of that business problem. But then when you get onto the consulting or the services side of the house during the kind of post-contract phase, it helps them to prioritize which features and capabilities they enable for the customer based on the value impact it can have. It helps them to align on, I'm not just turning on a feature, I'm trying to turn on a feature and deliver some configuration that maps to the specific business problem. It helps your customer success manager continue to orient the account around what is it that I specifically want to that we specifically partnered for, and are we on the right course to deliver on that business objective that we originally signed for, or do we need to course correct? Do we need to set different expectations? Are we tracking in line to see value together? And that one's critical because typically every business case I've ever written, at some point during the life of the contract, the customer's pivoted, especially on a 3-year deal, and something's changed in their organization. So you need to be able to adjust your original value hypothesis and your delivery plan in order to meet the customer where they are. Otherwise, you will get unexpected churn at some point through the life. And then finally, you need your product organization to be thinking about how the features they're creating and how the products they're developing align to this value framework, and how you strengthen the value framework with capabilities that matter most to your customer, as opposed to designing cool features that the market's asking for. And when you bring all of that together, you'll be able to build a strong, robust, value-led organization that doesn't have to compete on roadmap and features, but is able to compete on, this is how I solve your business problem, and this is how, as a partner, I understand and deliver against your business need and make sure I govern to deliver on the commitments that I've made. And that's really how I think about scaling value, and how many of the successful organizations that are doing groundbreaking value work would look at structuring how they go to market. So thank you for kind of the opportunity to share with you today. I've kind of given you a snapshot at a high level around some of the building blocks you would do to enable to build a value first motion into your go to market, how you would equip your sellers with the messaging and the underlying foundations to be able to have executive first conversations about the business problem, and how you go about establishing that common language that you can use all through the sales cycle to navigate away from product differentiation and into kind of value first business problem differentiation. So with that, I'm going to pass back to Nicola.
Matthew, thank you so much. We've already got a few questions, and some of them we'll tackle at the end, but I just have a very selfish one, although I'm quite relieved because Patricia has also just asked the same question, which is, I love the fact that you're talking about that handover from sales through to CS. So key. Where does marketing fit into this, particularly when you're talking about the messaging? Do you tend to get product marketing involved? Do you bring in the whole marketing team? So, and clearly being a marketer, this is very important to me to understand.
Yeah, 100%. So those messaging frameworks that I described, that's always a co-collaboration with the marketing organization, right? Because those modules that sit underneath that with all the messaging guides and all the kind of talk tracks, that's where marketing help to kind of flesh those out and produce that content. And then typically once you've got those kind of those persona-led pursuits, the marketing team can be writing customized content and copy and advertising spend to try and drive those type of customers into the top of funnel. So 100%, like as I said, it's a team sport. I kind of said product when I on that last slide, but I kind of meant product and marketing because it's a joint effort between the
On about us. I feel very offended.
No, but in fact, we also often find that product marketing are partners in the value motion because they can deliver the insights and the core delivery performance benchmarks of the company that then can form part of the value story.
100%. And Martin's right that value realization loop then becomes this rich source of marketing content because you end up having happy customers that have a tangible business problem that has been measured, and has been able to deliver. I noticed there's a couple of comments about Medic in the chat as well, and like everything I ever do is Medic related. Like Medic changed my life 10 years ago, and I will not do anything but sell with Medic. The Medic framework slots perfectly into this because obviously in Medic, what you're trying to do is you're trying to qualify with a single language around qualification, specific needs of a customer. And when you think about what I just showed with that framework around how do you have a conversation about the business problem, how do you relate that back to metrics, how do you relate that back to the persona, all of that is designed to help a seller to unlock the Medic framework underneath it and answer the Medic questions, and simplify that journey. What I always find when organizations roll out Medic that haven't done it before is they roll out the language of Medic, but none of the tactics or none of the plays underneath it. Because Medic isn't a sales process, Medic's a qualification language and helps you to kind of build that consistency in your business. And things like value selling, things like command of the message, there are many other great frameworks out there, will help you to unlock Medic for your organization to make it actionable, make it tangible.
I'm just going to ask one more question, Matthew, and then I'm going to pass over to Martin. But what do you think is the most important part of the process? And where have you seen the most weakness, vulnerability in the value engineering process?
Yeah, and I kind of already answered that question at the beginning, but I'll reiterate. When I see organizations flirt with trying to sell on value, they normally decide I'm going to put a business case into my sales cycle. I'm not going to change the way I sell at the front end. I'm not going to change the way I interact with my customers. When we get somewhere and it's qualified, and I think we've got something, I'm going to put an ROI number in front of the customer. And they kind of produce these in-house ROI numbers and these business cases. And whilst they're great tools, the customer's not in the mindset and ready to receive them. So your value, the value add that you're bringing to the table becomes dismissible. And you've done a lot of great work, but you haven't necessarily got the right to land that with the customer at that time. And many organizations, when I come into the first time, that have put value into their business, they put a business case tool in and they kind of show business cases. They've forgotten the most important part of a business case is the believability of it. And you only get believability by establishing the relationship and co-creating that business case. And you only do that by solving the customer's problem right from the beginning. So that's one of the big things that I see organizations get wrong quite frequently. And then the second part is actually telling the customer your product is better than or superior or whatever. Those conversations, they don't bring mutual value for both parties, but aligning on and helping the customer diagnose the business problem and helping them to explain that business problem inside their organization is a big part of what you should be doing with value selling, because that helps them articulate the need inside their organization and it helps them justify budget in a way that they can't do if you're just talking about products and features.
Thank you, Matthew. Is it okay if people have further questions if they reach out to you on LinkedIn?
Of course, yeah, no problem at all.
And we should have some more time at the end for any further questions as well. But Martin, what I'm really intrigued in is like, when do you actually bring in a value motion? What's the right time of business? And how do you do this from scratch?
Look, it's ultimately the question we get asked a lot with our product, right? A lot of the times when we start and roll out our solution, companies start, but what is our value driver? What are our value drivers? And I think that what's really important is to start the foundation. If we remove the word selling and just keep value, value is foundational for any organization from the ground up, right? And we talk a lot about product market fit, but really it's about value market fit, right? Why would somebody want to buy my product? Product market fit is why would somebody want to use my product? Value market fit is why would somebody want to buy it, right? And a lot of our customers start asking, how do we establish our value drivers? What is it that we need to use as that foundation? And so to figure those value drivers out, we actually kind of have to start at the end, which is value realization. So there's only really three overarching categories in value, and Matthew mentioned them actually. You can either increase revenue at the top line, you can save costs, or you can mitigate risk. And mitigate risk arguably is part of cost savings, but we'll keep them as three, right? And within them, there's kind of an infinite number of additional variables and outcomes. It could be productivity increases, time saving, operational efficiencies, you name it. Every company has a series of these. And so your company can be one or a combination of these. So really to build your value motion, if you're kind of just getting started, start at what you're actually delivering to your customers. What we call kind of reverse engineer the ROI from what you're already delivering to your existing customers. In fact, if you think about Forrester reports, IDC reports, that's basically what they're doing. Companies are hiring them to go and speak to their customers to understand objectively what the value that they're delivering is, so they can use that as a marketing report, right? But you don't need to spend that kind of money. You could do it yourself. So imagine interviewing your customers and asking them the questions, what is the value that our product or our solution is offering you? But don't just ask once, keep asking that question, right? Dig deeper and deeper. Keep asking, but why is that valuable to you? Or why is that valuable to you? So I'll give you an example. We work with a lot of AI companies because obviously AI is exploding. I'm sure you all know. But a lot of AI companies, they may have operational efficiencies. The value, the operational value is very clear, but how they translate that value into real financial economic impact or align that to the problems that their customers have is the issue that a lot of them are grappling with. So imagine you're an AI legal software company, right? And your solution is helping companies save a lot of their legal teams, save time in drafting and reviewing contracts. And there's a lot of that, right? Because there's a lot of time saving in that. So imagine asking your customer, right, why is our solution valuable to you? And imagine their first answer is because we need fewer lawyers to actually handle the workload, right? So the value driver there could be a cost saving because you don't need to hire more people, or ultimately maybe a headcount reduction, which is never the nicest outcome, but there is a variable outcome, and you can measure that by a saving in FTE. But imagine another type of option. Imagine they say, actually, your product is great because we can get more stuff done with current staff. We are more operationally efficient, right? But why is that valuable to you? Because every company will have a reason why operational efficiency may be important to them. So imagine they say, because we're a small team and we're often a bottleneck for other departments within the company. But why is that important to you? Because imagine they say, if we're no longer a bottleneck for a sales team that needs us to be able to sign off on contracts, then they can actually move quicker, sell faster, and sell more, right? So that's it's a revenue increase. And so by digging deeper, every organization can understand really ultimately, not just a top line, yeah, we can save you time. What does time saving mean? And so if you're an organization that needs to start building your core value drivers, those value drivers are the foundation of how you can then start speaking to your customers and your prospects. In doing so, the other benefit is that you're going to build the benchmarks on which to actually measure your hypothesis, right? Because then companies, you can ask them, if we're saving you time, on average, how much time per person? What is it? Is it time per person, time per document? How do you measure that time? And if you have enough of that data point, 10, 20, 15 companies, whatever that you speak to, at least you have a foundational benchmark to say, right, when we go to market, on average, our solution can save you 40 hours per month per person, right? What is it? And then you can start building out the value, the economic value of solving that problem, which is kind of foundational to Medic, right? How do you identify pain? And how do you identify the value of solving that pain? So lastly, I guess what I'll say is in doing this exercise, which is kind of a reverse engineering of your value from what you're currently delivering, you're capturing the three most important components of building a value motion. One is you're establishing the core value drivers that underpin your business. That isn't just sales, it's kind of everything. You're also figuring out the benchmark performance numbers that can then calculate the value that you can deliver for each one of your prospects. And then lastly, it builds a foundation for the talk track and set of questions that you need to train your sales reps to go out and sell on value. Because if they know those, then they can have those in-depth conversations. And your business case then becomes founded on those three, and it makes it much more credible, much more believable. That's pretty much the foundation of how we work with organizations from our tooling, and it works quite well because it kind of operates for companies at any stage of their life cycle. And it also works in a really good way to orient the entire organization in a kind of an exercise around, right, what is a true value that we're delivering? And that means all the sales rep and the whole company, much like Matthew mentioned, it's a team sport, all aligns on those core variables. Now, with that in mind, unless you have any questions, I'd love to hand it over to Katya, who's going to talk a little bit about how HubSpot successfully introduced value selling into their sales process, most importantly, without sacrificing pipeline.
Thank you, Martin. You can keep talking. I always love listening to you, but let me kick off things. Here we go. Okay. I hope you all hear me well, see the slides. So I will talk a little about the case, how HubSpot implemented value selling and how we're using Simba as a technology to actually streamline this process and have our sales reps on board with their value selling methodology. Before we kick in, my name is Katya. I used to work as an enterprise rep at Figma and HubSpot. A couple of months ago, I moved to a manager role, so I feel a bit terrified still, but I hope it will go well. As a sales rep, I sold to different markets across EMEA and Nordics as well. And right now at HubSpot, I have a fairly unique role because my team is all reps in their first year at HubSpot across EMEA corporate. So every newcomer, when they come to HubSpot and they hope to build the right foundation to become successful, I'm pretty much a person who can help them and guide them on how to build that right foundation here. So when we talk about value selling, before I go into HubSpot use case, I think it's worth thinking about the business environment we're in. Because if you think about 2021, that was a year of SaaS. I remember I was an enterprise rep at HubSpot, and then I moved to Figma in 2021. That was an incredible year. Like, I remember the amount of demand for a solution like this, the budgets, all the money around, just go and take that. Their businesses wanted to change, they wanted to improve. Even like the teams were growing significantly. I feel like in 2021, if you're in sales, in a car selling, somebody would reach out and say, you know what, you probably will be good selling HubSpot as well. Come on board. So even in HubSpot, we are a 19-year-old company. 2021 was one of their most successful years for HubSpot business. And we grew our team. In some regions, we even doubled our team if we talk about sales. And what happened then? 2022 came and we saw the growth slowing down. A lot of things were happening in the world, and businesses were a bit more like risk averse. They didn't actually want to change. They wanted to, play safe, stay with the status quo and see how things are played out in the future. So 2022, this is where we felt, okay, the growth is actually decreasing. 2023 was even harder, and 2023 was the hardest year for me as an enterprise rep. So we really understood that, okay, this is a shift is happening on the market. The buyer behavior is changing. We need to adapt. And in 2025, an interesting thing is happening is competitors are coming from nowhere. Even like in the CRM space, there are so many more startups coming in, AI startups. Every time I go on LinkedIn, I see an ad from a CRM technology called Atio. Their ad and positioning is, we're better than HubSpot. So this is another disruption that we see on the market, that it's so much easier right now to build tech and launch tech and look into distribution channels, that we actually see the growth in competition significantly. So when you think about that growth slow down, so we saw that the sales teams are struggling, we're not hitting our targets. So we in leadership were like, cool, you guys all need to sell on value now. So that is a shift we're doing. And if you think about HubSpot, we were we've been inbound engine for so many years, for over a decade. Sales reps are spoiled with inbound traffic, inbound leads coming in their way. And this is where we understood that in 2022 to 23, we understood that we need to make that shift from demo-led sales to value-based sales. And that shift were run in parallel with inbound selling to outbound selling. So if you think about value-based sales, when you come on a call with a prospect who doesn't actually have an idea of the challenge they want to solve, they don't really know if they need this change or not. If you have a demo-led sales, this is like basically a road nowhere, and it's a bit of a disaster on how the sales process can play out in the end. So value-based selling help us to position our platform effectively, but also help us to qualify their business need effectively and work with our champion to drive that change internally in their organizations. So if you're new to value selling, I love this so what test, and this is what I coach my reps here at HubSpot with. Think about let's say if I have my sales rep saying to me, oh, I just spoke to this prospect, they are such a great fit, they have all of those different technologies in place. HubSpot is a unified platform. We can consolidate all of this stuff on HubSpot platform. We're such a good fit. My question to a rep, so what? So we're a unified platform. So what? What does that actually mean to your customer? And this is where, if you have always this question in mind, this is how you can tie your feature to actually meaningful and easy to understand impact. Because when you talk features, that means something to you. It means nothing to your prospect. They have their own world, how they understand things. So another kind of red flag, if you're a sales leader and you talk to your rep and you constantly hear a phrase like, we were such a good fit, the prospect just didn't get it. Didn't get it, this is a problem that the value selling wasn't there, because this is not a prospect fault that you couldn't communicate clearly for them to understand why they need your tool and why they need your solution and why they need a change. So every time a sales rep says, they just don't get it. It was so clear. It was like we were right there. It was like, okay, let's go back, make a step back and think about so what. Just an example, when I used to talk to my prospects, let's imagine I'm talking to a marketing manager and they say, oh, Katya, we're using this marketing tool. It's so hard to use. We need something easy to use. Ease of use, this is the core positioning of HubSpot. Ease of use and adoption of our platform, it's in core position. So if, imagine I'm not thinking about value selling, I would jump right on it and say, amazing, it's hard to use. Obviously, I see it, I feel your pain. HubSpot is so much better. We're so easy to use. So that's how you basically go and position the feature and benefit of your tool instead of talking to their language. But think about ease of use. This marketing manager will go then to a CFO and say, you know what, we need to change all of the stack because HubSpot is so much easier to use. That means nothing to the CFO. Ease of use, look, that's your problem. Figure this out, learn the platform, like you can do it. So that's not actually talking to economic buyer, people who actually sign the contracts. So that's why if we look into the so what test, okay, it's hard to use. So what does it mean to your business? What does it mean to your work? Tell me more. Let's go deeper into the challenges and how that impact your process, how that impact you meeting your goals. So this is kind of, you go deeper into that pain and uncover what's really important and might be important for the economic buyer as well. Another example is, if we think about, let me think. If you think about HubSpot case, for example, I speak to a sales leader and sales leader says, you know, Katya, our technology, it's like we have a low adoption, people don't use it. So what? I basically go from that perspective. So tell me more. People don't use the technology, low adoption. This is a surface level problem, but let's say I uncover because of those low usage, they cannot forecast accurately and they fail on their forecast months over months and the investors aren't happy. All right, that sounds a bit better for me to go and quantify that a little bit more. So this is how you think about value selling. Talk to your different shareholders, understand what's important for them, and really go deeper into their pain, what hurts the most, and how we can potentially fix it. And if you think about value selling, this is what Matthew actually mentioned as well. Especially in enterprise space, if you're selling to an enterprise business, you probably don't have just one person you're selling to. You have a lot of different shareholders coming on calls to you, talk to you. And their most important thing in that process is to identify the value for every single shareholder. So when I talk to IT director, what that person cares the most, where it hurts him the most. And then we we see their value for every shareholder, and then together with them or together with my champion, I can tie individual values to the company's strategic objectives. So this is where we say, okay, this thing hurts you, this thing hurts you. How we can tie all of those kind of individual value to a larger company goal that we can present to economic buyer a very strong business case. And this is exactly where Simba is helping us. Simba is a technology that kind of helps us build the framework and equip our reps with a tool for them to use during the whole sales cycle. So during qualification process, that Simba can help us to qualify in, qualify out our prospect. During discovery, Simba can help us go deeper into their challenges and quantify that pain. What is the impact on the business? Ideally, how much does it cost for the business not to solve that six months from now, 12 months from now? Then we go to the presentation, and let's say if we have a clear picture what is not working and what we can improve, then during the presentation, we know what to show. And typically, this is the most powerful thing of value selling, because when you know exactly where the pains are, you know exactly what to show them. And that is kind of aha moment. And this is where prospect truly understands why they need a change and why your technology is a better fit. And then we go to shareholder buy-in. This is what I mentioned. Together with the champion, we, make the value proposition deck, value proposition framework sound relevant and resonate to the shareholder buy-in, to their economic buyer. It can be CFO, CEO, whoever signs the contract. So basically, Simba unlocks this value selling on all HubSpot deals. And if you think about this, it's basically a value selling framework that makes the case for the 3 whys. Why a CRM? Why change? Why HubSpot? And why we need to do this change now. So this is a framework that we use on all of our deals. We see a significant increase in close won rates with this value selling when the sales rep is leading the process with value selling. But the most important thing is, as an enterprise rep, I used to do business cases. I used to do value selling. But back then, before Simba, I used all sorts of tools. I could do a Google Doc. I could do an Excel spreadsheet. I can just put it on an email. And I sometimes spend so much time on kind of putting that all together to present it. And I typically did it later on in the process, like maybe after the demo, right? With Simba, this is a format that is easy to introduce to salespeople because this is a framework that is easy to understand, easy to use. And this is going to help us to make a standard on how we're running value-based selling within HubSpot. So every time I coach my reps, and if somebody is new to HubSpot, I literally introduce this as, look, this is part of our process. This is how we do it. And this really resonated a lot with the sales rep and helped them a lot, even if they're new hired to HubSpot and they don't really know well yet the whole entire process. And just to call out, Martin and his team was incredible in helping us to build this framework together. So we collaborated a lot with the team and kind of made that work within HubSpot. Cool. So that was my part. I hope it made sense. If any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you so much, Katya. I'm just going to again be super selfish and ask a question from me. If you were going to do the whole process again, what would be like one or two things you would do differently?
The whole process of introducing value-based. I think we would just do it earlier. I think creating framework, again, I think the most important, like the most helpful thing here is have a clear framework and a standard you want your reps to adopt. When you talk about business cases and there is like different ways people can do it. It's really hard to see if it's working or not. When you have a framework, the adoption is pretty well. And another thing is the way we did it in HubSpot, we had like a pilot group of sales reps who were heavily using it. And then we let those sales reps sell this internally to other sales reps. So I think that was super helpful because, you know, when you are introduced a change as a leader, that perceives in a different way. When a sales rep says, oh my God, that works for me. I closed this deal with this thing. You guys need to use it. Everybody was excited to go and try and using it. And I think like Martin's team got really busy with sales rep reaching out and say, help me and how to do it. So kind of having that champion within organization to introduce this change internally, we would do it early on to kind of expand the usage even early in the process.
Exactly.
One of the other insights that we found just with rollout was that as much as one wants to take credit from their technology for impact, it's not just the technology, it's the impact that it's having over individual sales behaviors. Imagine the reps started qualifying better because they could use a value hypothesis from the very first call to understand, does this prospect actually have the information that's necessary for us to build out a value story? If they don't, you can kind of qualify them to a degree out, or at least know that it's going to take longer. And so by better qualifying in the beginning, that means you have better quality in the pipeline. So naturally, the win rate already increases considerably.
Yeah.
The other thing that we always say is that, and put it to one of the Katya slides, is that we always say that there's two sales. There's a one that as reps we see, and the one that we don't see. And that's the one that happens with stakeholders, with our champion trying to sell in the case for change. And so it's important that as part of the value sell, you support your champion to be able to understand how they're buying, what they're buying, so that they can make the case to their stakeholders, because ultimately that's going to lead to the decision of why buy today.
Yeah. And I think like if you feel like your salespeople are a bit hesitant to introduce this, one thing I did as a rep, when the deal is closed won, when we signed the contract, I would actually give a call to my champion and just said, look, now it's all signed. Congratulations, I'm super happy. Before I open a bottle of champagne, tell me more how it actually, like, why did you buy HubSpot? How did conversation happened internally? And this is where rep understand that, look, they bought not because of this magic feature I thought were so important, but there's like a complete different thing you would hear. So this is a really great exercise that reps can do after their deal is won, because typically prospects are so happy to share. They, you know, relaxed, contract is signed, so they give a lot of information that sales rep can use during other sales process. Yeah.
I love that exercise. It goes to Matthew's point about value realization. You suddenly recalibrate and make sure that you're establishing what is truly the KPIs that we are going to measure success on. Sorry, Matthew, I think you're going to speak.
No, it's all good. I was going to address that, like what Katya was just describing there effectively was partly to your point in the questions, Tony, around is there a risk of insulting the customer by kind of talking this way? And like the analogy I always use when people ask that question is, well, if you go into a doctor with an ailment and the doctor just looks at you and gives you the answer, do you feel like they really truly understand what the problem is? If you actually have a conversation with the doctor and they ask you 3 questions and then you feel like you've really connected to them and understood them and they've really understood you, do you feel better about the diagnosis they give you? that's value selling. I would love a world where we didn't have to call it value selling. We just called it selling, because actually selling is the art of solving customers' problems better than anybody else. That's what we do. But fundamentally, I've never come across any business that I've sold to in my 15 years career in sales where they haven't appreciated me understanding a little bit more than my competition and helping them to see something or articulate something or share something inside their business better just through a conversation that we've had. And like, that is the art of selling. And in the modern world, because the buyer is so educated on the features and functionality, because they can crawl the internet and they can get an AI to tell them who are the top 3 people in this segment, the human connection to help your customer articulate why they want to do this is your biggest differentiator now. And hopefully what you've seen from us today is I've given you some of the theory around how you build that together, and then Katia and Martin have showed you how you can operationalize that in such a simple way without it having to be a big complicated project like it would have been 10 years ago when I first started doing this. And you can now activate this at any stage of growth within your organization and quickly and simply help your sellers to just ask some credible questions and share some credible information that gives them that different dynamic that they didn't have before.
Patricia, you had a question. Do you want to come off mute and I'll let you share?
Yeah, so I was going to ask Matthew or Martin whether, so I was thinking about the measurement of the realization of value, and whether instead of or in conjunction with asking the customer whether there are examples of customers that perhaps have incorporated that into the product usage. And so after basically discussing with the customer what is the definition of the achievement of that value, whether we can use the product to basically say for sure that that impact has been achieved.
But Matt, you want to start first?
Yeah, sure. So the idea of how do you show that value realized either in in the product that you're selling, or actually through the other technologies like Simbi, these kind of value management tools. In my mind, most organizations now that bring a software or AI product to market have a value mechanism in it. It's designed to show the customer how usage is translated into some kind of cost saving or some kind of efficiency saving. I think about probably back 5-6 years ago, and I've worked at other organizations, we were embedding that into the technology so that the customer could look at it on a daily basis and understand it saved me this much time, it's saved me this much efficiency, it's created this much automation for me. And that's a really good start. But that doesn't connect back to the original business problem. So that's why the value governance still doesn't go away when you bake in your technology has saved me 1,000 hours. Well, that's great, but what did I do with those hours, and how did I translate those hours into something meaningful for the business? I see lots of organizations right now wrestling with that exact thing, because generic value, like I've saved 1,000 hours, or I've automated 100 processes, or I've sent 1,000 emails, is nice, but it doesn't justify the ROI for anybody. There's still a piece of work that has to get done after that. So what organizations like Simbi are doing are helping to extract that kind of information from platforms and then rationalize that into the customized business case. And that's kind of the work that I do with organizations as well, to help them take those kind of cursory bottom of the pyramid measures and measure and map them up to top of pyramid executive priorities. So to answer your question, yes, I see lots of technologies doing it, but I don't see that many technologies doing it really well. So it's really defensible value that could be cached in a boardroom.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's not that easy, but I was thinking, oh, that would make it also like a really good base for like discussions on expansion with customers, and
Exactly.
I appreciate that it's not that easy to do that.
You're exactly right, though, and that is exactly when, in that kind of loop that I showed with the success people, the way that we do it at SalesLoft is we're not actually doing it in the product. We have Looker dashboards in the background, extracting stuff from the product, running calculations that then go into the success plan, so that the success manager can have exactly that conversation. But it's not just on features in the product, it's actually features in the product with the quantification methodology. So we have industrialized it so it can be done quickly and at scale, but it's not just in the product, is the way I would phrase that. And that seems to be the sweet spot for now. But organizations like Martin's are working on maturing that and using API calls to be able to take that information and then present it in a really meaningful way to customers. Nicola, I think we had a couple more questions. We've got a few more
We
minutes.
do. And I just wanted to highlight, Praise has just mentioned this has been super, super helpful, and she's actually going to be using it in an interview at 2 o'clock. So Praise, let us know how that gets on. Scott, do you want to come off mute and share your very good question?
Yeah, so you've spoken a lot about positioning value in the pre-sale phase. You position value in the pre-sale phase. Are you seeing customers then wanting to track against what's positioned in pre-sale, in post-sale? And then do you run a risk then from a vendor perspective of, if you cannot meet the value drivers or the metrics that you've positioned in pre-sale, in post-sale, you're then held accountable by the customer and run the risk of a non-renewal? So I'm just wondering how, if that's what you're seeing,
100%.
because if you're not holding the customer accountable,
yeah,
then you actually put yourself at risk at the end of a 3-year renewal. We know that's what's going to happen. That's what happens in the SaaS space, right?
Yeah, 100%. And that third, I showed you those 3 motions. That third motion is exactly what you described. It's that post-contract, that 2 or 3 years of value realization, making sure you're holding yourself accountable. From what I see in all the customers all the organizations I work with advising on value, if you don't have that value realization motion now, you're behind. And if you're not holding your team accountable for delivering on the promise you make, you are going to get churn. Now, there is a bit of a way out here, because every business case I've ever written in my life goes stale within the first year. Always does. The company you're working with, their business changes, their priorities change, their finances change, people change. So the value realization mechanism is about helping you govern against what you promised in the first contract, and then course correcting and changing the direction of the business, the business case, to continue to deliver value through years 2 and years 3. And without that mechanism, that's where you get those nasty surprises of a 3-year contract where you get that churn bomb. Now, the reason I kind of talked about putting the framework in place so everyone can talk value language is exactly to solve that problem. So that everybody associated with an account can understand what was the value the customer wanted, how to talk about it, and how to deliver against it with those use cases for exactly the challenge you're describing, Scott.
Just one thing to add there though as well, because I've been a buyer myself as well. So I've been a buyer and on this side, is that I think you mentioned governance. I think governance is key there, because as a vendor, you can't deliver all the value yourself. You have to have a mechanism to hold the customer accountable as well, because otherwise I feel that you put the power into the hands of the buyer, because it's very easy for the buyer to turn around and say, I'm not getting any value, if they're not held accountable to deliver anything as part of that journey to deliver value in their organization.
Couldn't agree with you more. So part of value realization is setting up a joint governance council. It's setting up a specific set of actions that both organizations are going to do together. It's setting up those 90-day check-ins, those executive business reviews, and actually putting a line between this value case will be delivered by these people on your team and these people on our team. And it's that governance is key to it working, because otherwise you're 100% right. If you make a promise in a business case and you don't attach that to actions on the customer side, you're going to get pulled around at the end of the contract.
And I just have one last question. I'm very, very sorry. Just one last question. Are you seeing that these value products like Simbi that we've seen today are giving you the capability to hold customers accountable for the value realization piece? Do they have the capability to do that?
Yeah, getting closer and closer to being able to do that at scale every day. So yes, that is possible, and there are technologies out there that you can do that with. I don't see many organizations adopting it at scale yet, but most organizations are trying to get that muscle delivered. And the reason I don't see people directing it at scale is often the CS organization needs to have a level of upskill to be able to really have those conversations in the right way. And there's some brilliant success leaders out there that are doing it, but that's normally where the bottleneck is at doing it at scale, not the technology.
Oh, perfect.
We've hit 2 o'clock. If it's okay, I know a lot of people have to drop. I just want to do one quick last question as a bit of a wrap up. Matthew, Katya, Martin, if you were going to give the audience one key takeaway from the session, what would it be? Matthew, I'll start with you.
Value selling is just selling. It's the art of talking to a human being, being understood, and helping them to understand your perspective. The numbers are kind of irrelevant. They're confirmation bias.
Great one. Katya?
I think a key takeaway, value selling helps to build clarity during the sales process and align all the shareholders towards a certain goal that we're hoping to address. So this clarity and a defined process forward, how to get there, this is where value selling really helps.
And Martin, I'm going to let you have the last word.
The foundation of your value selling motion is already in your business. You just need to find it by speaking to your customers. So it's not a mystery, it's there.
No detective work required, just a conversation. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Fantastic session, and massive thank you to our 3 wonderful panelists, I'm going to call you, Matthew, Katya and Martin. I will be sending the recording, and Matthew has very kindly shared his deck, so I'll share that as well. And they're all very happy for you to reach out to them on LinkedIn if you have further questions too. So wonderful to see you all, and hope to see some of you tomorrow because we have another webinar on AI and go-to-market.